Hi, hello, assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. It's Donrix. Before I talk deeper into the topic, just as a disclaimer, the information that I've gathered are publicly available and the points given in this video is based on my personal opinion. And I am not in any way a professional or expert in the area and not in any way intended to cause any harm to anyone. Should you feel that you need assistance in the matter, please consult and seek help from professionals and experts in the field. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about social media and loneliness. I deactivated my personal Instagram account maybe almost a couple of months ago because I was busy with my thesis and all the other assignments, student stuff. At this point, I already uninstalled Twitter for many months and I have not used my personal Facebook account for many years. TikTok, I only used it a few months before uninstalling it. I don't think it was good for me. It made me very judgmental of people, which is bad. Granted, at one point I did leave social media before, especially Facebook and Instagram for 2 years, but I came back and I become stuck with it because I had to manage the accounts for my department once when I was working in the office. But when I left before, as I had too much idle time, it felt like a drug addict fighting the temptations from consuming the drug again. In my case, in a few weeks, social media to me was like a drug. You're always thinking about it before settling down. Free time increases more dependency on social media. It is different with this time that I left because I have no time to be scrolling on social media, i.e. too many assignments. I did not have that addiction sort of reaction to go back to social media like Instagram and Facebook. And then I realized that to avoid increasing dependency towards too many social media, I need to do something else so that the feeling would not be hanging around the corner. Ironically, despite me saying that I have decreased my dependency on social media, here I am posting on a social media, YouTube. However, I do believe that social media is not this evil villain that we have to fight, but rather it is like the internet, or symbolically like a knife. How we use it will determine whether it is going to benefit or the other way, bring us closer to our demise. Loneliness is defined as distressing experience that occurs when a person's social relationships are perceived by that person to be less in quantity and especially in quality than desired. The experience of loneliness is highly subjective. An individual can be alone without feeling lonely and can feel lonely even when with other people. According to Suzanne Daggers-White in an article on Psychology Today, there are 3 types of loneliness: existential loneliness, emotional loneliness, and social loneliness. The first one is existential loneliness. Existential loneliness is the result of a broader separation related to the nature of existence and, in particular, a lack of meaning in life. An individual may be in the company of others but experience existential loneliness. However, Suzanne Daggers-White stated that a little bit of existential loneliness is good for the soul, and it is inevitable part of being a human and is somewhat good in terms of self-exploration. They are also something to which we are averse and want to avoid as much as we can. Loneliness can be bad when it is excessive and associated with negative matters such as false attachment. The second type of loneliness is the emotional loneliness. According to Suzanne Daggers-White, I'm sorry if I butchered the name, this type of loneliness arises from a feeling that you lack relationships or attachment. You might experience emotional loneliness when everyone but you have a romantic partner in your group. Emotional loneliness can be felt when you need someone to talk to about something going on in your life, but feel that there is no one available to contact. If your heart has broken, you might feel lonely for the person who has moved out of your life. You might be lonely for a close friend, a parent, a sibling, and so on. And the last type of loneliness, according to Suzanne, is social loneliness. Social loneliness occurs when you don't feel a sense of belonging to a group beyond yourself. You might even feel social loneliness even when you are in a romantic relationship with a partner you treasure. If you don't have a wider circle of social support, you may feel that you and your partner don't have a group with whom you belong. When you walk into a party and don't recognize anyone familiar, a feeling of social loneliness may wash over you if you don't typically feel comfortable approaching new people. If you don't feel that your presence is valued in a wider circle, you might experience social loneliness. Bertha Coombs in 2020 reported that younger workers and social media users feel loneliness the most. This is based on Cigna survey study. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce it right. According to Happify Daily, loneliness is a worldwide epidemic, and according to a study, 40% of Americans by Cigna said that they feel isolated than others and lack companionship, and that their relationships aren't meaningful. In addition, research also shows that loneliness, living alone, and poor social connections are as unhealthy as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And diseases that follows are heart disease, dementia, depression, and is said to increase the risk of death at any given time by a whopping 29%. This is also supported by a professor from University of Wollongong, Australia, Robert Patoni. I'm sorry again if I butchered the name, which wrote that loneliness is linked to early mortality, increased cardiovascular diseases, poor mental health and depression, ending one's own life, and increased social and healthcare costs. With all social media like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or whatever that we use, we are connected to people more than ever, as if we have a window to view another person's life. But why some people say that this increasing connectivity is also increasing our loneliness? In an article published in Forbes, Alice G. Walton in 2019 wrote that loneliness linked to negative social media experiences. This is based on from research in the University of Pittsburgh and West Virginia University. It is written that it's likely that the connection goes both ways, that in addition to social media leading to depressive symptoms, people who are already depressed may be more likely to use social media or have negative experiences with it. And referring to another newer study, Alice G. Walton further wrote that for every 10% rise in negative experience on social media, there was a 13% increase in loneliness. For positive experience, there was no such connection. From Alice G. Walton's point of view, she instigated that loneliness is caused and linked with the bad experience on social media. In another research conducted by Matthew Pittman in 2017 titled Phoniness, exploring the relationship between mobile social media, personality, and loneliness, phoniness, according to Pittman, is the state where an individual's social media use contributes to feeling of loneliness, which then in turn affects social media use. The study focuses on social media apps such as Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and texting. Pittman also stated that each social application had initial benefits when used in quote moderately, as it is associated with decreasing loneliness. However, if used excessively, each platform in the study will give diminishing returns, which further use of social media has no effect or was associated with increased loneliness. This somehow relates with Alice G. Walton's point, as Pittman stated that if society were to misuse mobile devices to connect with others in focus of social media, and when the connectivity that people are searching for remains unfulfilled, people would probably get stuck with increasing loneliness, or in his case, phoniness. In addition, there are also other opinions, such as from an article by Roger Pazzoni, again, I'm sorry if I butchered the name, Associate Professor of Psychology from University of Wollongong, Australia, stated that the way we manage our loneliness is changing. Pazzoni explained in his book, written with his co-authors, that they argued that people manage their feelings differently than in the past. According to Pazzoni, society has replaced the 20th century idea of stable, permanent careers spanning decades with flexible employment and gig work. This prompts regular relocation for work, which results in disconnection from family and friends. Living far from friends and family, isolated individuals often deal with negative emotions alone, through therapy or through connecting online with whoever may be available. This is how social media comes into place, in which initially it sort of reduced our loneliness. However, getting back to the previous research by Pittman and the article from Walton, it will reduce loneliness if it is used correctly, but if social media is used wrongly or a user gets a bad experience while using social media, it would be associated with increased loneliness. So we can see from some views that it is not that surely social media will definitely cause loneliness, but rather how we use social media will result whether it is going to reduce our loneliness or amplify it even further. However, in my opinion, why we get into social media partially is to somewhat get some sort of connectivity or simply relationship to another person, whether the person is someone we may or may not know in real life. When it focuses on people we don't really know in real life, this is when parasocial interaction or relationship concepts start to amplify. Parasocial interaction is introduced by Horton and Wall, excuse me if I pronounce these names wrong, in 1956, and it refers to a kind of psychological relationship experienced by members of an audience in their mediated encounters with certain performers in the mass media, particularly on television. Regular viewers come to feel that they know the familiar television personalities almost as friends. Parasocial relationships psychologically resemble those of face-to-face interaction, but they are of course mediated and one-sided. With the increasing boom of social media influencers, I think it is safe to say the relationship with influencers on social media is also part of parasocial interaction. How does parasocial interaction relate with loneliness? According to Yongbe, and Hyunmi Jang, sorry if I butchered the name again, in their research titled Social and Parasocial Relationships on Social Network Sites and Their Differential Relationships with Users' Psychological Well-Being, they found that the dependency on parasocial relationship is positively related with loneliness, while dependency on social relationship is negatively correlated with loneliness. And from the research, they found that more dependency on both social and parasocial relationships are positively related with social network sites addiction, or SNS. We can safely say that these relationships does bring somewhat a level of loneliness towards us, despite the initial effect of making us less lonely, but in the end it makes us feel miserable and a lot lonelier when we are addicted to social media. Another article that points out how social media relates to increase of loneliness is by Gigan Mamoser, if I mistakenly pronounce it, I'm sorry, in which the author focused how loneliness relates with his term of FOMO, or simply fear of missing out. In the article, a study published by a Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology written by Melissa G. Hunt, Rachel Marks, Courtney Lipson, and Jordan Young was taken as a reference, in which the result from the study shows that the use of social media and negative effects on well-being, primarily depression and loneliness. The study focused on 143 students of University of Pennsylvania and divided into two groups. One group would continue social media habits as usual, and another group would control or limit access to their social media such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and it is reduced to 30 minutes per day, meaning only 10 minutes per platform. At the end of the research, it is found that the controlled group with limited access to social media experienced a decline in loneliness and depression. However, both groups saw a decline in levels of anxiety and fear of missing out. Gigan Mamoser also added some other research in his article that relates on why and how loneliness relates with social media through research from Oscar Ibarra, sorry if I butchered the name again, and Amy Somerville. Oscar Ibarra, PhD, professor of psychology at University of Michigan, explained that the nature of social media is that it is a curated version of someone's life. Subconsciously, there is a part of our nature of being human that end up making us constant upward social comparisons depending on how frequent we use our social media. Amy Somerville, a professor of psychology at Miami University in Ohio, stated that the fear of missing out is a mental health issue that relates with social media. FOMO, or fear of missing out, according to Amy Somerville, is an extension of larger issues of inclusion and social standing. Once our basic needs are met, like food, shelter, and water, are fulfilled, the need for inclusion and social interaction ranks right up there. And she continued by stating, the FOMO experience, specifically this feeling that I personally could have been there but I wasn't, I do think that the part of the reason that's really powerful is this cue that maybe we're not being included by people we have important social relationships. And from this, it would probably link to loneliness because missing out in something we know but not a part of, and then relates with all the three main loneliness that have been stated earlier. Now that we know how loneliness might be related with social media, what can we do about it? Well, to simply say leave social media would probably be impossible if we are working individuals that require social media to be connected with people in performing our jobs or conducting our business. But as mentioned previously, social media is not a villain, but rather the way we use it will determine whether it will result us with loneliness or less of an impact. Simply put, to increase self-monitoring while using social media as suggested by the research by Hunt, Marks and Lipson and Young. However, having more idle time after reducing social media usage need to be filled with other healthy activities. This is to avoid feeling this sense of dread and emptiness when being away from social media and consider relapsing to excessive use of social media from one platform to another. Happify daily infographic did show how to do so, but let's focus on methods that does not increase social media usage such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, WhatsApp and some others. Join a book club of your interest. Join a club of your interest like a book club or sports. Be careful with the pandemic though. So join spirituality circle as long as it is not a cult. Being a Muslim, mosque usually have this Quran teachings, lectures and some others, and with the lockdown you can join webinars, although it is sort of social media, but in a way we are not comparing with others but rather we are learning. It makes a big difference. The next thing is volunteering at any organization which helps the community. Volunteering is good for our mental health as it encourages a term called altruism, which means unselfish regard for or devotion to the welfare of others. While social media subconsciously increase our needs to show curated versions of ourselves, volunteering reduce it and turn us into being a little bit empathic and selfless towards others. However, while it is not wrong to post our contribution in volunteering, I do find that excessively it would perhaps attract somewhat of a competition of who contributed the most, hence not as healthy. We can also set some changes in our behavior, such as having small talks with people such as the cashiers or people we just met just for a brief moment at the street. practice meditating or increase our ibadah if you are also Muslim like me, getting more blessing from that. Isn't that good? Or simply reading a book that would be benefit to us. One thing I would like to add is writing a journal or a reflection journal also helps in reducing loneliness, at least to me, because unlike social media, writing on a journal or diary is only meant for me to read and mind alone. There is no competition with oneself. Well, even Marcus Aurelius, a famous Stoic and emperor, does reflection journal. Why not us, commoners? John Cacioppo, I'm sorry if I butchered the name, also have an interesting acronym EASE to help people getting their personal connections back in a manageable way. The first one, E is for extend yourself, A for action plan, S for seek collectives, and lastly, E for expect the best. There are also other ways to reduce loneliness, but this is some based on my simple research through some articles and infographics gathered on the internet and a slight personal opinion. With lockdowns happening due to C-19 virus, we know more people have turned to social media in seeking comfort, but please do not take it as the only way to reduce loneliness, as too much of it might bring too much dependency and perhaps would be unhealthy if used excessively. Some people would bring us joy, and some among the people we cherish most before also might end up causing us to feel an unhealthy loneliness at one point. Of course, building relationships takes time, and there will come a time that some bitter memories will be created with some people, but I do personally believe that while some in our life might be a bad apple, but it is not all that bad, ain't that right? Therefore, I would like to advise to avoid false attachment to people to fill in our loneliness, because it increases more dependency in things that we can't control, in this case, people. Regardless of who they are, one day they may change, especially on social media, whether it is to a greater or worse extent. Therefore, manage loneliness through healthy activities and reduce social media usage to avoid false attachment, and that is all that I would like to say on these concluding lines. Surely there are a lot of other factors that would cause loneliness, but for me in this video essay, I'm just focusing on social media. Links and credits are available in the description down below. That is all from me, Donrix, and thank you for watching. Bye! And have a good day. Not to forget that.